Hello, everyone. This is Jeff Hastings. Thank you for spending some time with me today. Over the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to spend some time talking about enterprise operational informatics. So this is a portfolio of solutions that we have here at Philips that are addressed at improving the operational efficiency and clinical outcomes within the hospital. So I'm going to spend about 15 minutes doing a presentation, and then we'll jump into a demo of some of the applications. What I have on the screen here are probably things that you recognize as far as challenges within your healthcare system, either continued volume growth or perhaps changes in the study volume that you're experiencing within your facility. For example, in an effort to reduce radiation dosage to the patient, your CT volumes may be dropping, but your MR and ultrasound volumes might be increasing. Another large issue at many facilities is staff shortages, not only the radiologist shortages, but also the IT area, as far as having IT analysts and others that have the experience in the healthcare space. Those roles are a premium as well. Another one I want to draw your attention to is the operational optimization, as far as reducing the costs for the healthcare system overall. And what we see in most cases, a lot of the annual spend is focused on the operational side. So the service contracts, things like that are needed in the day-to-day operation, and not as much in the capital equipment piece. So roughly what we see in North America, at least, is about 88% of a hospital's annual spend is in the operational area. And the enterprise operational informatics portfolio was specifically designed to address all of these areas and really help you with the efficiency and the operational improvement within your healthcare enterprise. Where PerformanceBridge and the EOI portfolio fit in the healthcare system is actually in the imaging area. So this was started with the radiology department and cardiology scanners as well, but we're also expanding that out to other areas within the hospital. So when you think about it, when a patient needs to have an imaging procedure performed, they call their referring physician, or they call their primary care physician, go in, they have an appointment, and they said, you need to have a CT exam to check on what's going on. The process that they go through is pretty much the same with all patients, as far as there's a component for the scheduling, there's a component for actually acquiring the image itself, interpreting the exam, and all the way through tracking the follow-up recommendations. So all of those things happen each time a patient needs a procedure, and you can kind of refer to this as the imaging chain. So PerformanceBridge is focused on everything that occurs within that end-to-end imaging chain. Now, a couple of key things to remember. First of all, is that the portfolio is vendor agnostic. So we would love for everyone to have all Philips equipment, but obviously we know that's not the case. And so we designed this from the beginning to be vendor agnostic, vendor neutral, vendor positive, whichever term you would like to use. So the functionality that we have applies equally to all vendors of the imaging equipment. The next thing to keep in mind is the fact that we're using multiple sources of information. So our standard implementation uses HL7 and DICOM for the integration, but we can also bring in other standard or structured data sets, such as billing information, staff scheduling, or even a customized application that you may have developed on your own. We can bring that in as a source of data as well. The next thing I'd like you to keep in mind is the fact that this is real-time information, and not just real-time as far as receiving the data and displaying it, but real-time to the user. One of the challenges that we hear from many facilities is the fact that the person that has the question may not be the one to actually be able to access the data. They have to send an email to an analyst to pull a report or generate an image, etc., and that can cause a delay. So this is real time, not only in terms of integration, but also real time as far as the user being able to customize their specific queries, the data they would like to see, the layout they would like to see, etc., and answer their own question in real time. So I'd like to walk through a few of these areas and kind of draw some comparisons with other applications that you may have within your department. So as I said, PerformanceBridge is focused on the entire end-to-end imaging chain. If you think of it in terms of systems that are in place in a hospital today, you have your HL7 based systems. So your HIMSS, RIS, EMR, etc. And those typically provide information around the overall volume, perhaps billing information, some tracking of follow-up care. It varies from system to system, but in general, they're kind of on the left side of this graphic that we have on the screen right now. What the HL7 doesn't provide a lot of times is information on how the modalities themselves, so your MR, your CT scanners, how well they're operating. They may be able to provide some information on a volume at a department level, but perhaps not granular information. For example, how many portable C-arms or ultrasound systems, how many scans were done on an individual piece of equipment and what types of scans, things of that nature. The next area that you have is your modality vendors. Typically can provide some measures of analytics using either DICOM information or perhaps proprietary system logs from the individual piece of equipment. So this is an area where there is some information available, but it's looking just at the equipment utilization itself and may not look at other areas like the scheduling or radiologist turnaround times, etc. The third common area is your PACS vendors. You'll have information from the PACS vendor about the archive size, perhaps some information about radiologist reading or turnaround times. It kind of varies, but typically your PACS vendors are not going to provide information around the equipment utilization or scheduling. So again, just a silo of information. And the final one I want to point out is your dictation vendors. Usually they have very robust tools around the radiologist efficiency, report quality, things of that nature, but commonly they're focused on the reporting aspect and not imaging efficiency and scheduling, things of that nature. So when you think about it, a imaging analyst, IT director, director of radiology, etc., if you're trying to find out what is my overall end-to-end turnaround time, and you're looking at it during the complete imaging chain or over the complete imaging chain, typically that analyst needs to go into multiple sources or multiple silos of information, pull the reports, generate an Excel spreadsheet, perhaps merge them together, create pivot tables, use another product for data visualization, etc. It can be a very time-consuming, labor-intensive, and also an error-prone exercise in trying to manually pull all these together. So what PerformanceBridge does is we actually bring all of these sources of data together into a single repository. We validate the data, so we're actually using multiple sources of information, like I said, DICOM and HL7, that can be used to cross-reference or support the numbers from the other data stream. And I'll go into an example of that in just a minute. So we're making it more efficient to gather the data, making it more accurate in terms of the number of data points and the granularity that we can provide. And we're really providing an end-to-end perspective on identifying bottlenecks or other sources of both operational as well as clinical inefficiency that then allows you to make the appropriate decision. So by seeing everything from an end-to-end imaging chain perspective, we do provide that granularity to highlight the issues, and then we have a suite of applications that can be used individually to target specific problems. So to go through HL7 and DICOM, some of you may be familiar with HL7 and DICOM, and others may not be. So I want to kind of provide just a baseline definition. First of all, HL7 is Health Level 7. That's a language, if you want to think of it like that the IT systems in a hospital speak. So your scheduling, your billing, your reporting systems, etc. Those are all HL7 based systems. Provide a wonderful amount of data, and they're really designed and targeted to solve specific workflow in different areas of the healthcare enterprise. DICOM, on the other hand, is a different language. So DICOM was developed as a way to share imaging information, so the MR, the CT information, etc., sharing that with not only 3D workstations, but also PACS systems to allow the radiologist to read the studies and the clinical evaluation to take place. DICOM is focused on a different area than HL7, so it has different data points, different metrics. Both of them obviously extremely valuable, but they're really targeted at different areas. So if you look on the screen, I want to focus really on why we combine HL7 and DICOM. HL7 has a lot of information at the start of the exam and then at the end of the exam. But as far as what happens in the middle, from the time the technologist starts the exam in the wrist to when they complete the exam in the wrist, that middle area doesn't have any data from the HL7 stream, simply because HL7 was not designed to capture that type of information. But if you look at the DICOM data stream, it has a tremendous amount of very valuable information, data points that are within the DICOM header that can be extracted in order to fill in the gaps, so to speak, from that HL7 data stream. So one example of that I want to point out to you, actually two examples. The first is just looking at the start time and the end time in the wrist. And what's shown on the screen is the desired workflow. The technologist or the patient arrives at the facility. The technologist gets the patient, brings them back. They start the exam in the wrist, perform the procedure, and then complete the exam in the wrist. That way you have accurate timestamps. But frequently, and unfortunately too frequently for what we would like, there are times for one reason or another, the technologist does not start the exam. Maybe there's something that distracts them, etc. But they may perform the procedure, realize that they hadn't started the exam, and then after the procedure is finished, they log onto the wrist, start and end the exam back to back. So what that actually causes from a data flow standpoint, it actually causes errors both in the start and at the end of the study. And I'm sure all of you are familiar with it. Once you've started looking at the data, you're familiar with identifying the fact that the data doesn't look right or something is wrong. And many times it's because of the manual errors that have been injected into the HL7 data based on human error. So if the exam is not started properly in the wrist, then it can actually look like that MR procedure perhaps took 5 seconds to complete as opposed to 45 minutes. So that skews information as far as the reports, both at the front end, as far as the patient preparation or exam turnaround time, but it also can skew things on the back end for the radiologist reading. So for example, they may complete the exam in the wrist, but if the technologist has not sent the study into PACS, then that can skew the information for the radiologist turnaround time as well. So an example of that might be on the weekend, there's radiologists that are staffing at the main campus, and there might be an outpatient imaging center where instead of sending the exams through as they're completed, the technologist might be sending them kind of in a batch mode, so to speak, which then skews or causes incorrect information as far as the radiologist turnaround time. So with PerformanceBridge, we're actually capturing all of these data sources, so we can look at the time the technologist started the exam in the wrist, and then also compare it with the DICOM generated timestamp of when was that first image actually acquired by the scanner, which is not subject to human error, and also the different timestamps on when the study was sent to PACS, when it was sent for advanced visualization or 3D reconstruction, when was that study received back from the 3D lab, those types of things. So again, the idea is to provide more sources of data in order to complement the types of reports that you're getting from perhaps your existing RIS or EMR. So we're adding in additional information to validate, and also to give you the ability to dig a little bit deeper or get more granular in the information as you're starting to do your root cause analysis on bottlenecks. In terms of the portfolio, I mentioned that PerformanceBridge and the EOI Enterprise Operational Informatics is not an individual offering, but rather a portfolio of solutions. If you think of it in terms of traditional analytics, or the classical definition of analytics, as far as reports, data visualization, dashboards, etc., we have 3 applications that fit within that category. And again, all of these have the same data source, HL7, DICOM, etc. But the difference is how the user wants to interact with the data. Do they want to interact with it more in terms of a business intelligence tool, where you're getting very granular and looking at different correlations between data points? Or do you just want to have a dashboard that you get in, look at the information and get out, or pull reports, etc.? But though the analytics component is actually a small piece of our overall portfolio. We have a number of other applications that are targeted at solving specific problems. So for example, if you wanted teaching file functionality as an example, Case Indexer would provide that. We have different applications for resident review as an example, in terms of being able to track what report, or in the report, what was the wording changes between what the resident put in and what the attending signed off on, and also a scoring mechanism that the attending physician can give to the resident. Peer learning, which is a peer review type of application, technologist image quality. There's a number of different applications that we can deploy in order to solve a specific problem. 2 others that I want to point out on this screen are dose-wise. So we have dose monitoring within the overall portfolio, so tracking the radiology or the radiation dosage exposure for the patient, tracking that over time. That also includes the ability to do organ calculations, as well as peak skin calculations for fluoro exams. And we also have the ability to track real-time staff dosage during those procedures, when they're getting a real-time radiation exposure to the staff as well. Another one I want to point out is the protocol analytics and protocol manager. We also have the ability to manage the protocols, the scanning protocols themselves on the Philips MR scanners, and CT will be added into that a little bit later on. Finally, the other thing I wanted to draw your attention to is the software development kit. So all of these applications are built on a platform, and we recognize that there's times when a customer, a facility, would like to build their own applications, especially university hospitals or others, perhaps with a strong research and development arm or a bioinformatics department. So we open up our portfolio, or we open up the platform, I should say, and allow you the ability to build your own applications on top of the infrastructure. So PerformanceBridge can handle the back-end data integration, collecting all the information, but we allow you, through the use of a software development kit, to leverage that information and create your own applications to solve specific problems that we may not have addressed yet. So really a great concept in terms of being open and allowing you to create your own applications. The final slide before we get into a demo is just the process. I want to talk through that. You can think of it in general, you want to have a consistent way of approaching the problem solving. And we kind of like to look at it as finding the issues, showing the issues visually, and then fixing the problem. So find, show, and fix. And we start by looking at a number of both operational as well as clinical issues, utilization, dose, etc., repeat imaging. Determine where you're at from a baseline standpoint, as well as benchmarking you against national averages or against your own benchmarks that you would like to input. Then we show that visually. As we all know, if you see something visually, a lot of times it causes the problem or the bottleneck to stand out a little bit more, as well as gaining buy-in from different stakeholders. So we show visually where the problem lies, and then we use the applications that we have to target the specific areas that you want. And again, all these applications can be purchased individually to run on top of the platform and solve specific problems. And then that becomes a constant feedback loop. So as you solve one problem, get that at a steady state, you can move on to the next, but yet still maintain visibility in your dashboards or in your data visualization on the problems that you've already solved, just to make sure there's no drifting and that the quality still maintains where you left it. So with that, let me jump into a demo. So I'm going to I'll talk through a couple of these applications. I'm only going to demo a few of them. As you can see, there's quite a few. And so if we cover, or if I don't cover one of the areas that you're interested in, please reach out to us and we can schedule a follow-up presentation, a follow-up demonstration specifically on the applications that you're interested in. One of the others that I didn't mention before that I'm going to show, just because it's one of the ones that has a little bit more a resonance, I guess, with people right now, is the follow-up tracker. So actually tracking the information using natural language processing to scan the radiologist report, identify that there was a follow-up recommendation, and then put that on a dashboard to ensure that it was accurately followed up on. But that's one I'm going to show specifically in just a minute. I think I'll start with quality, productivity, and then practice, just to talk about the analytics component a little bit. So I mentioned it before, all of the analytics components look at the same source of data. The difference is how you want to utilize the information or how you want to interact with the data. Okay, so in this case with quality, quality is the data visualization component. That's really how it's focused, but it's tied in with productivity, which is one of the other applications that is more the reporting component. So I can start by having my dashboards at the top, things that I'm interested in. I see it here. I've got some basic information, but then if I wanted to launch into greater detail, into more of a report or an Excel spreadsheet type view to do root cause analysis, I can certainly launch directly into that by launching from this application directly into productivity. I'm going to cover productivity. I'll come back to that in just a minute. But I wanted to show you the fact that you have quite a bit of flexibility in terms of customizing the reports. So I think this is one of the key things that we really receive positive feedback from our users, is the ability for them to go in and create their own customized reports based on any of the parameters that we're receiving from a DICOM or an HL7 standpoint. So for example, on the metrics, I have the ability to start, if I want to build my own dashboards, customized dashboards, I have the ability to define what is my metric, what am I interested in actually looking at. So if it was overall volume as an example, I can start there. Do I want to group it by site or perhaps group it by technologist? You know, it's up to me in terms of how I want to group the information. Maybe I'll say technologist, and I can show the groups, so I can determine how granular I want to be in terms of the number that I'm presenting. Do I want to have it a bar chart, pie chart, etc.? Create timestamps, upper and lower control limits. Do I want to have a fixed date range or a relative date range? So for example, for the last 7 months. So I'm in complete control of how the graph looks. And then I also have the ability to go in and select individual filters. So for example, if I wanted to have this graph just so information, maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday between certain times, or Saturday and Sunday on the weekends between 8 in the morning and noon, I'm in complete control of doing that. Or I could target it perhaps by a specific modality. So for example, if I wanted just MR exams, I can add MR in, and it would narrow the focus from all exams to just my MR studies. And you see that this was actually updated. Now I'm showing the technologists that perform MR studies as opposed to everything, all modalities. I could even get even more granular and look at procedure codes. So maybe limit it, or I should say filter it by an individual procedure code. So for example, perhaps maybe I just purchased a new scanner or implemented a new scanning protocol, and I want to track how are the technologists doing with that new protocol. So I can look, here's my overall. If I had set up a control limit that I wanted a certain, certain baseline, or that was my target, I could have that displayed here, and then see how each tech is doing towards that target or compared with that target. So again, the key thing to remember is the fact that you have complete flexibility in terms of creating how the graph looks, as well as the data that's included in the picture, in the graph. For productivity, the same is also true as far as having the flexibility. Productivity is more of the spreadsheet-based view, or my report view, if you want to think of it like that. Again, the data is exactly the same. It's just how I want to interact with the data, how I want to view it. I can set up regular reports if I have specific things that I run once a week, once a day, etc., or that I just want to reference on demand. I can build those in advance to be able to select them as needed. Or I can create something from scratch. So again, using the same type of filtering methodology, I could create a report for specific days of the week, modalities, referring physicians, procedures, sites, etc. You're in complete control of that. If I wanted to start with this basic, I just did an RVU, I pulled up an RVU report. I could start with that, but if I wanted to add in additional columns, it's simply a matter of selecting the plus sign and then adding in the additional things, the additional column that I might be interested in. I also have the ability, if I wanted to export this report into a spreadsheet-based view to allow me to import it into another system, or perhaps keep that as a record. You certainly have that capability. What we typically recommend, though, instead of just someone creating a report and then emailing it around for people to refer to, we're really suggesting that people give others access. So instead of emailing a report that becomes outdated the moment that you generate it, instead change your workflow to actually give that person, maybe the director of radiology, give them direct access into the tool to allow them to look at everything in real time. This is especially true of situations like the emergency department, where things change so dramatically throughout the day. So kind of a change in mindset as far as how you're interacting with the data. I also wanted to show PerformanceBridge Practice. I figured it would have timed out, and it did. Oops. So PerformanceBridge Practice is more of a business intelligence tool. And so what I mean by that is, again, it's the same information that's being accessed as far as the source of data, but instead of looking at one metric or one dashboard at a time, you have the ability to see multiple graphs, multiple dashboards on the screen at the same time, and see how they interact with each other. I'm going to switch over to a manager dashboard just to show you that real quickly. All of this is real-time information again, so creating the different graphs based on how you want the data to be presented. If you see something that's of interest, you have the ability to start right there and do a drill down analysis, or determine, go level in terms, go deeper in terms of the information. Even from this main dashboard screen. Each user, on all of the applications that I've discussed, each user has the ability to select their own dashboard. So you can either have common ones that everyone uses, or each user can be granted the right to create their own dashboards if you would like to give them that access. I want to do a quick example of just a drill down capability that we have within this tool, and show you how I have the different dashboards linked together. And so as I interact with one, the others will follow along. So on this graph, this may be an enterprise system, so 20 different facilities, all feeding into a common area. I have it, or a common archive, common system. I have the volume broken out by modality right now, and then I have all my technologists listed, looking at the turnaround, comparing HO7 versus DICOM for the start exam, which then leads into patient preparation time. So to do a quick drill down analysis, maybe I'm interested in MR. I want to improve my efficiency there. So I can select MR. Let me drill. and I can look at what's my patient classification. So I break it down between outpatient, inpatient, emergency. Perhaps I'm interested in outpatient, driving the efficiency there. So I can narrow my focus on outpatient. Drill down further and actually look at the individual machines. So now's a good example of how we're bringing in the DICOM information. This is the AE title or the machine name that's coming from the DICOM header, not from HL7. And we do have the ability to map those into something that's a little bit more user-friendly as far as describing it in real words or a real description, as opposed to just what's in the DICOM header. So in this example, I can see here's my individual MR scanners that do outpatient work. If I select MR number 5, it has the lowest volume, so obviously I have additional capacity that I'm not using on that scanner right now. So I've narrowed my focus. I've now selected MR number 5, and you can see that the other examples, the other dashboards, this is the turnaround time. So here's all the technologists that perform work on that individual scanner, DICOM, patient prep time, etc., all driven on that specific scanner at that specific facility. I can drill in further and say, okay, what actual procedures are performed on that piece of equipment? Not everything that I do from an enterprise standpoint, but what is being performed on that individual piece of equipment. So I can see in this case, I'm doing its head, so it's pretty much a general MR scanner. So I'm not doing, it doesn't appear like I'm doing much cardiac work or women's health mammography. So perhaps by adding a mammography coil, buying a cardiac package, I could start doing scans on that piece of equipment because I have additional capacity that I'm not currently utilizing. So that would be one approach. Another approach, since I'm talking about outpatient, maybe I want to reduce my scanning time. So increase my efficiency, so I don't need to have this outpatient facility open as long. Instead of Saturday running until 9 p.m., perhaps I close at 5 o'clock or noon, just by becoming more efficient. So in that case, I could actually select, I'll just use the most common procedure that I'm doing. So now I'm down, I've narrowed it down now to an individual facility, individual scanner, and an individual protocol. So I've eliminated most of the variables other than just the technologist and being able to compare how one's doing to the next. And in this case, I can see most are doing pretty well in the mid 30s. I do have one technologist, Tech 85, taking a little bit longer than others, but not much. But I also have one technologist over here that's only taking 17 minutes. If based on this scan, I expect that it should take 25 to 30 minutes to properly do the procedure, then it could be that this technologist might be cutting corners or not scanning everything properly. So that would be an area that I might want to investigate, just to make sure that everything is being done as it needed or should be. Another interesting thing, technologist 85 that I noticed, they're taking a little bit longer to do the scan, like I mentioned, but I look down here, they're actually, from a patient preparation time, they're actually doing it faster than everyone else, which is kind of interesting. So that would help me enable a discussion, or it would facilitate a discussion to say, okay, this is interesting data. What do you think might be going on? It could be that this technologist is getting the patient on the table faster than everyone else, but perhaps not positioning them completely properly on this head study. So if the head is positioned incorrectly after the scout, they might be going back into the scan room, repositioning the patient, and then beginning again, which would cause their overall scan time to be a little bit longer. So again, just, it's highlighting areas of the data that allows you to say, okay, why is that? And it turns it into a very objective, data-driven discussion, as opposed to just a subjective, gut feeling type of discussion. For the last thing that I wanted to hit was follow-up tracker, and I'll touch on this real briefly. I know we're almost out of time. I already had it pulled up here. So with follow-up tracker, this is one that we've released recently, and it has the ability to do to use natural language processing to automatically scan the patient's or the radiologist's report and recognize that a follow-up recommendation was made and then add it to the dashboard. Why is that important? What we found based on the national studies is that roughly 10% of all imaging studies have a follow-up imaging recommendation. And of those 10%, we find that 50% are never completed. So they fall through the cracks. So obviously that has a negative impact on the clinical outcomes. There was a reason the radiologist made that follow-up recommendation. So it has a negative effect on the clinical component, but then also has a financial effect on the hospital. These are studies that should be performed in network, and there's a chance that either they're not being performed at all, or they're going somewhere else other than staying in the healthcare system. You're losing them to your competition, so to speak. So by automatically recognizing that a report was requested, we have the ability to add it to a dashboard, show that information to a scheduler that allows them to then reach out to the referring physician or to the patient to actually schedule that follow-up or the follow-up scan. So here's the study that was recommended, and actually showing a copy of the report, highlighting what we recognized, what we pulled out of the report, or why we were adding it to the dashboard, and then allowing the scheduler to reach out to the referring physician to go ahead and get that exam scheduled if they haven't. So it has both a clinical improvement that's made, as well as the financial component to the health system. So I appreciate you spending the time with me. This was kind of a quick review of the overall portfolio, as well as some of the applications. I would look forward to talking with you. So if there's additional questions that you have, please reach out to your local sales rep here at Philips, and we can continue those conversations. Thank you very much.